Welcome to the Authorshow, where we feature new authors and books, from fiction to self-help and everything in between. You'll find it all at theauthorshow.com. That's theauthorshow.com. And now let the show begin.
Hello and welcome back to the show. This is your host, Don McCauley. Today we're welcoming the program author A.G.R. Goff, and she is the author of Layers. Annette, how are you?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. Lovely to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Actually, I'm originally from Germany. I grew up in East Germany, a place called Leipzig. Moved away, met my husband, who is British, and then I lived in the UK for a while. And right now I live in South Africa.
Well, tell us about your book.
My book, it's a psychological thriller. It's called Layers. And it's the typical British psychological thriller with some suspense and mystery elements thrown in. It's basically a story about a young girl who wants to find out what happened to her mom, who she knows died in a car accident, but she doesn't quite believe the story that, her adoptive parents told her. So she contacts her father and, just knocks on her door to get some answers. And, he lets her in, but the story he tells her is not quite the story she expected to hear. So it's quite a mystery, and her mother is maybe not quite as innocent as she thought she was.
Now, who did you write your book for specifically? Who's your target audience?
Well, when I was writing it, I thought, adult readers between, I would say, the age of 25 to 50, maybe, male and female, who like psychological thrillers with British settings, background, the area, maybe British characters, but who want to try something different. So they like the British setting, but they might want to read something a little bit more international, moves around a bit, and has a few surprises in it.
So could you say there's any type of central message or perhaps underlying theme that you would say runs throughout your book?
Well, when I wrote it, I didn't actually write it with the intention of telling my reader a message or convincing them of something. However, now it's finished, I think if there is a message, it's probably nothing is like it seems, and even the nicest people can turn out to hide secrets sometimes, so be careful who you trust.
So if you had to choose, what would you say is the single most important idea you're sharing in your book that's really going to add value to the reader's life?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say it's probably to never give up, even in a situation that seems hopeless at first, but just keep fighting, keep believing in yourself, and don't believe everything you're being told at first.
So if you could compare your book with any book out there we might already be familiar with, which book would it be and why?
I would say probably The Thorn Girl by Laura Elliott. There are similarities, like a diary and a girl who needs to find answers about her dead mother. But my book goes a little bit beyond that and moves away, but there definitely are some similarities there. So I think mine is more psychological thriller than Laura Elliott's, but definitely some similarities there.
Tell us about some of the characters in the book.
Well, there are actually two main characters. The first one is Miranda. She's a young girl, young woman. She didn't have the nicest upbringing, so she digs a little bit into her past, and she finds out who her real father is, her biological father. So she knows her mum died in a car accident, but she doesn't quite believe the story that she's been told. So one day she just goes off and she knocks on the door of her father's house and ask him questions, but she thinks she knows the answer already. She just wants him to confirm. However, it turns out he's not quite the guy she expects him to be. He has a few secrets to hide, but not the secrets she thought. And he tells her a few stories as well. So there are a lot of twists and turns, and then the second main character is the best friend of her father, or the father she believes is that. So, and it's quite interesting what he has to add to the story.
So what is it that sets this book apart from all the others in this genre?
I think it's probably my background. So when I wrote the book, I lived in the UK, and I lived there for about 12 years. So I was very much influenced by the British culture, British settings, British characters, and I was very much into that sort of writing. But because obviously I grew up in Germany and I finished the book after we moved to South Africa, so there's a little bit of influence from there as well. So it's a very international thing. It starts very British, very typical, but it ends up in a more surprising way, in a more international way. So, and I don't think there are many books out there.
What inspired this book?
That's actually an interesting question. It was actually Alan Rickman, the actor. So one day when I was living in the UK, I was watching Harry Potter, and at the same time I was reading the books, and I realized that the character described in the books was actually very different, or age-wise he was different to what we saw in the movies. So, but I still liked how he portrayed the character. So I started Googling him and trying to find out what else he's been in and all that. And as you do, when you Google, you find out about a person's private life as well. So, and I like that he was not a typical actor. You know, he lived with a lady for many, many years, and he was actually quite mature when he started acting. So he wasn't a young actor. And suddenly the story started forming in my head about an older actor who would be, officially he was this really nice character, but he has secrets to hide, and he's not quite what people think. So it all started with Alan Rickman, really.
Why did you decide to start writing?
I started when I was about 9, but I was living in Germany, obviously, at the time, and I was just writing little snippets, so it wasn't a whole story, it wasn't a full book. I never completed a book there, so, but when I moved away from Germany, after I met my husband, and I lived in the UK, I started getting more confident speaking English, writing English, reading English. So I just fell in love with the language, and that was actually what I needed to finish a novel. So the stories had always been there, but German wasn't quite the right language to write them in.
Did your environment or upbringing play any major role in your writing?
It does. I mean, definitely. For me, it always depends where I am at that precise moment. Obviously, my upbringing plays a role because I was growing up behind the Iron Curtain, and you want to get away and you want to travel and you can't do that. So, but I only spent my childhood there, so it's just that part. Because I wanted to travel, so obviously I lived in the UK and now I live in South Africa. That definitely influences, because I watch people, I get to know people. When I travel, you know, they're different to me, they're different to the people I've met before. So, and that's very interesting, and it makes me curious, and then I think of stories.
What can you tell us about this genre and why you decided to write in this genre?
I always liked it. I mean, I started reading scary stuff, so like Stephen King and all this. And I moved away from it a little bit, moving to James Patterson and all that sort of thing. And it just fascinated me. I just couldn't put these books down, and I always wanted to write a story in that genre, in that area. And then, when I moved to the UK, this story just came to me, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
What's been your most rewarding experience since publishing your book?
That's actually quite a cute story, because it was normally when you start writing a book and you publish it, the first thing you do, you give it to your friends and family to read and tell you what they think. But it was a lady who I've never met before, and she's been given this book, and she came back to me and she told me she really loved it, and she recommended it to one of her friends. So, and that was so great. I actually couldn't stop smiling the rest of the day. So it was fantastic.
So how would you describe your writing style?
I would say snippets, because I don't have a real plan at first. What comes to me first is just scenes or parts of a story, or just someone who does something, or a fight, or maybe a bit of the past. So I don't even know where it's going, and so I write that bit down, and that's how I started with Layers as well. It wasn't a whole story at first. It was just bits here and bits there. I mean, the first thing I thought about was a scene in a theater where a guy sits at a bar and he overhears a conversation with someone else. And once I have a lot of these scenes or these snippets, then I start making a plan, and I start thinking, okay, where does this start? Where does it end? And give it a structure. But it starts with snippets.
So who or what would you say influenced your writing the most?
Well, apart from my upbringing, obviously, and my traveling, I would say maybe I read a lot when I was a little kid, and it moved. First of all, it was all sorts of books. There was nothing specific. And later on, when I was a teenager, it was Stephen King. So there was a phase where I read only him, nothing else. There was a Jodie Pickett phase I had. So all these, there isn't one specific person, I think, or one specific writer. I think it's a combination. But if I had to name one, it would probably be Stephen King.
So are your characters pure fiction, or do you draw from people you know in real life?
It's always a real person, but it's normally just a part of a real person. So I just see someone who walks funny, and I wonder why that person walks funny, or I overhear a conversation, or I hear someone talking about someone else. So I always get my ideas from someone who's really there, but I don't just copy that character. I just get just a little bit, and then I move on from there, and then turn it into fiction.
So would you say you're more of a character artist or more a plot-driven writer?
Character, definitely character, because that's how everything starts with me. I just think about someone and how they look or how they do something and why they do something. So at that point, it's never a plot. It's just the person doing something in my head. And then I try to figure out why they're doing what they're doing, or maybe what's in their past that could actually lead to that. And once I've got that, and I have my characters, then I start thinking about a plot.
In your opinion, who should buy your book?
Well, definitely readers who like psychological thrillers, and more specific, people, male or female, but between, I would say, 20, 25, 50, who like to read thrillers with a British setting. So, because there's always something British in there, just because I spend so much time in the UK. And if they're curious, if they want to do something different but like the Britishness of it, that's just a perfect reader.
Do you have a website?
Actually, I do. It's pretty simple. It's A.G.R.Goff.com. And it just tells you a little bit about my books, what I've written, what I'm doing right now. And there's a little section where you can contact me as well. So if you want me to improve my website or want to tell me something or whatever is on your mind, just send me an email.
This has been just great. Our guest today has been A.G.R. Goff, and she is the author of Layers. Annette, thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
This is Don McCauley, wrapping up another edition of the Author Show. Go out there, buy the book today, and please share this interview with your friends so that they too have the opportunity to discover our guests and their work. Remember, the Author Show can be accessed at any time at theauthorshow.com. Selected interviews can also be found on major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and many more. And whether you're an author who would like to be featured or a reader in search of new books to read, the Author Show is a great place to start. Check us daily as we continue to introduce wonderful authors of very interesting books on The Author Show.
Thanks for listening to The Author Show. Find out more about authors and their work at theauthorshow.com. Theauthorshow.com. Tune in next time to another great author on The Author Show.